Hello, hello, and welcome back to the David Messiah YouTube channel, where our watchwords are to teach and to build back up the kingdom of Zion. And my name is Sidney Thomas. I'm the founder and the moderator of this YouTube channel. The title of the present talk is the Cosmic Symphony. The Cosmic Symphony. And it is a continuation of the previous upload, in which what was it called again? The Most High's cosmology, the Most High's cosmology, and I hadn't quite finished it. I kind of ran out of steam and decided to kind of leave it where I left off, and promised, if the Most High so guided me, to return to the subject. And so that is what I am doing now. And that earlier upload had kind of keyed off the polyrhythms of the primes, a piece of work that was done by one Evanstein. I've forgotten his first name now. Anyway, it in itself was a sort of a model of what I'm here now calling the Cosmic Symphony, and which I called a Cosmic Symphony in that book of mine, Numerology and the 7 Days of Creation. And what that book, at the end of it, was really addressing was the cosmological implications of the revealed science of numerology that was the subject of that book. Because in the book I was well able, I think, to prove the statistical significance of numerology, in that certain groups of people of certain accomplishment, like boxers, champion boxers, like United States presidents, like the generals of the Second World War, they all, as groups, demonstrate the truthfulness of the numerology that I was given, because they carry the double eight master champion vibration at a frequency far in excess of what would be considered the baseline frequency for the sort of general population at large. And so that is true for if you take the sort of low status occupations as a baseline and do a numerological analysis of the names of those occupations, the master champion vibration occurs only around 10% of the time. If you look at high status occupations, I think it was about 40%. So that is also already tending to show the significance of what would be predicted by a numerological analysis, if it's true, as given to me here in this book. And then continuing, if you look at champion boxers, you would expect to see the rate again, higher, certainly higher than the baseline, and that is what we do see. And if you look at, I think the next in line was U.S. presidents, and then it was the World War II generals, the West Indies cricket team that was undefeated for about a decade and a half in the 1980s, and so on and so forth. So there's a statistical significance to it. Well, if there's a statistical significance to numerology, as given to me, going back to the 7 days of creation and tied into the 7 days of creation, then obviously there's a cosmological significance to it. And so when we considered that the physical cosmologists, the so-called scientistic cosmologists, who would sort of eschew the creator and eschew the creation story as given in Genesis and throughout Scripture, they went with the so-called, the Copernican principle and the Hubble hypothesis and so forth. And now they have come unglued, because under that principle, they had long believed that we are in a planetary system of which the center was the sun. And so they've gone with this heliocentric model. But in any case, the center of the galaxy is some spot far, far away, and the original center where the Big Bang took place is somewhere further away again. But part of what had been a fixed idea of that cosmology was the idea that there was no special significance at all to the Earth. But what they found now is background cosmic radiation, microwave radiation, shows a geocentric alignment, which completely, eviscerates the idea of heliocentrism, eviscerates even the idea that, even of a galactic center, so to say, around which the sun itself revolves, and eviscerates even that idea that there is this sort of central point from which, all has been expanding in accordance with the Hubble hypothesis of an expanding universe. So they have to do a serious rethink of their postulations, which is sort of, brings us to now look again at what indeed has been asserted as fact, not as scientistic hypothesis, but as fact by the doer of the deed, which indeed is what Scripture is. Now, some may find that hard to believe, but if you're following the principles of science, it's not a matter merely of, you find the testimony of the doer of some deed incredible. You have to now debunk it, rather than sort of, forging ahead on the basis purely of speculative kind of hypothesizing, which is what, the science project seems to require in this case. And speculative hypothesizing of the kind of matter that you cannot replicate in a lab, you cannot redo experiments to check upon the truth of the hypothesis that you're putting forward. So some of these speculations are in a sense unfalsifiable because you really can't check them. But anyway, here is a case where on their own suppositions, in fact, it has been checked and it has been found wanting. Okay, so in that sort of a gap that therefore now emerges, and keying off that model provided by the polyrhythms of the primes, and keying it back to the idea of the Cosmic Symphony, I want now to address the Cosmic Symphony idea as being a kind of a qualitative model of the Most High's cosmology. Now it's a model, so it cannot obviously stretch to sort of include every little sort of wrinkle that is there in the Most High's creation. The Most High's creation, obviously, the idea of a model is not that you replicate it's like a map. You don't put every feature of the ground in a map. If you try to do that, it would no longer be useful even. So a model is to give you a sort of a map. It's a much smaller scale, if you like, representation of the real thing that you're trying to understand and wrap your mind around. So don't take the idea of a cosmic symphony as being a model for the Most High's cosmology, as being a sort of A to Z comprehensive model of all of creation. But it gets close, and that is the point. And it captures some of the essential qualitative aspects of the Most High's creation. And that is indeed what we want. Okay. So let me here now go back to the book, the numerology and the 7 days of creation, to that part of the book where I had indeed made reference to the Cosmic Symphony. So this would now form the backdrop to what it is I'm then going to sort of tease out of this. Where to start? I'll start here. Therefore, music is a convolution upon itself, in the sense that we start with basic rhythms of the order of 1 hertz, corresponding to the frequency of a heartbeat, ranging normally from about 1/8 of a hertz to 8 or so hertz, so 8 beats per second, or 8 beats per heartbeat, so to say, or 8 in a polyrhythmic sense. That would be a fairly fast drum beat. And then incorporate the higher frequencies, for example, note A1, which is 55.5 hertz. And these higher frequencies are perceived not as rhythms, but notes entire, that then are themselves arranged in rhythmic. And that feature, by the way, in terms of what the auditory apparatus of the ear perceives, if you get up to a fast enough rhythm at some threshold, you would no longer hear a rhythm, you would hear a note. And that is indeed demonstrated in at least one of the YouTube uploads by that brother Evanstein. Okay? And that is possible with the little computer program that he's written to kind of demonstrate the polyrhythms of the primes, which also involves speeding up the sort of the meter, or slowing it down, as the case might be. Okay, and this now applies. So continuing. Ranging normally from about 1/8 to 8 hertz, and incorporate now the higher frequencies, example note A1, 55.5 hertz, which however are perceived not as rhythms but as notes, that then are themselves arranged in rhythmic patterns of the order of 1 hertz. Such a musical convolution, high-frequency notes arranged in low-frequency rhythmic patterns, is what constitutes a composition. It doesn't end there, obviously. This further may be extended to combinations of musical instruments ranging in voice from the very high octaves, 6 to the 8 or so, known as soprano, high pitch, to the very low octaves, known as basso profundo, the first and the second octaves. And this is in the sense of the piano, which is arranged into 88 notes, essentially a range of about 8 or so octaves. Okay, so the first to the second octave of the piano, the sort of low notes would be basso profundo. And if you go up to the very high end of the piano, the right hand end usually, the 6 to 8 octaves would be soprano, high pitch. These are called orchestrations or arrangements performed by whole orchestras comprising dozens or even hundreds of instruments and performers. And so you see how we're getting close to the idea that such an arrangement or a symphony can become to be seen as a model for the Most High's creation. Because if all is vibration, but I made that point earlier, if all is vibration, and this is what the numerological sort of science reveals, that there are aspects of numerology that is establishing facts known from acoustic musical knowledge, the idea of time, space, matter, vibrations and waves and so forth. These can be sort of extended to apply as well to time, space, and mind. I didn't use that phrase the last time, but let me throw it in. So time, space, and matter for the sort of grossly physical, and time, space, and mind, which would include the mental, the emotional, the spiritual, the psychological, and so forth aspects of man's existence. But those are not physical in the same way that obviously time, space, matter phenomena are physical, to be measured and so forth. But the ideas nevertheless apply, which was the whole point of numerology. An orchestration or arrangement of a piece of music may be likened to architecture. It is architecture of a highly ephemeral sort, moreover one in which dynamic elements are of the essence, but it is architecture nonetheless. It is ephemeral in the sense that it exists in time only for as long as the arrangement is played. Furthermore, it may be heard and in some sense felt or experienced, but it cannot be touched, it cannot be seen, it cannot be tasted. In this it is quite distinct from a piece of building architecture that may be cast in stone. The latter may last down the ages, like the Great Pyramid of Giza, but the former may be likened to architecture because it has form and structure, if not material solidity. And the latter also will, with enough time, pass away into non-existence. Therefore, there is a sense in which it may be claimed that rhythm and periodicity are what lie at the bottom of all structure. All that varies are frequency and period length, by which long-term structures may be distinguished from short-term ones. But in the abstract, one is no different from the other. That is to say, all structure, whether materially solid or musically ephemeral, is based on vibration and its principles. So this is what we're getting at in terms of the Most High's Cosmic Symphony. Vibration is of the essence. Because on the first day of creation, the Most High said what? Let there be light, and there was light. And we know light to be fundamentally a vibration. And to be, in effect, a wave. It may have particle-like behavior as well, but fundamentally it is a wave. And also, if it is a wave, then it has to have, same as with what we're familiar with in terms of time, space, matter, wave phenomena, there needs also to be a medium, and there needs also to be space through which now the wave may be propagated. And so there's the idea, well, what is the substance through which light is propagated? And this was the idea early on of the ether. Well, okay, I may come back to that, but let it lie there for the minute. In any case, as argued elsewhere, vibration and therefore frequency are what are needed to bring time into existence, as well as space and matter. So once you start the vibration, now you bring time and space and matter into play. You understand? Things as such spring into existence, occupying space and time only as a manifestation of vibration. So that everything in creation owes its existence to a vibration. That is to say, before the Most High brought the things of the world into existence, that formless state coincided precisely with the absence of vibration. And so what we're alluding to here, and must be now brought into play, into consideration, even as we suggest that the Most High's creation is like unto a cosmic symphony, we must also bring into play the idea of that tree of life diagram. And there are 2 or 3 or 4 uploads that have dealt with that question. And above the tree of life is that state called the Eshof. Literally in the Paleo Hebrew, it means no teeth, no mouth. In other words, that state before God even had a face, which is echoed in Genesis as being in that phrase where it says, and the earth was without form and void. So if there's no, God has no face, there's no form to it. There's a formless state in the beginning. Or if you like, before the beginning. Okay? But once you bring that first godly vibration now into play, the scripture lets us know that was only about 6,000 years ago. So scripture doesn't say, well, this earth is all that there is in terms of the Most High's creation. In fact, quite the opposite. There's a suggestion, but I may not get into that if indeed part of the purpose of this earth is to train another batch of gods, part of what is being suggested is, well, those gods will go on to become creator gods or co-creator gods of yet other worlds, which may look very much like earth. So that, prior to this earth and this world, there would have been eons of other worlds created. And the Most High would have obtained from those worlds all that which he wanted to obtain, which in some sense has to be, what is the word for it? Experience. Okay. It's like play. In a playground you play. There's no necessary other purpose to it but that if you like, pass the time. But okay, but that's going off into the speculative. I don't want to speculate too much. I'm trying to deal with the nature, the cosmological nature of this world in which we find ourselves. So that only started 6,000 years ago, according to the story as told. Okay? And in the story as told, there were 7 initial days of creation. And that first day he said, let there be light, and there was light. Okay? Which makes light spring into existence, which is a vibration. So that helps to sort of, at least it's not inconsistent with the idea that the Most High's creation is a cosmic symphony. So the cosmological idea being here now suggested that the cosmology of this creation is like unto a cosmic symphony, and therefore has vibration at its foundation. So it is coherent, it's not inconsistent. Yes. Go back here to the middle. That is to say, before the Most High brought the things of the world into existence, that formless state called the Ein Sof coincided precisely with the absence of vibration. And furthermore, with the initial godly word of vibration, time and space sprang into existence, and formless matter assumed form. And now what the idea of the tree of life diagram also lets us to understand is that it was not only time, space, and matter that sprang into existence, but also, if you like, time, space, and mind. So that even above the tree of life, in that formless state, the Most High had to have, as part of his sort of qualities of existence, the idea of consciousness, certainly, and will, because it was an act of will now to bring the world into existence. And to have will, and to exercise will, one also must be conscious. And if indeed you're going to go from a formless state to a state in which there is time, space, and matter, and indeed and mind as well, what you're also suggesting is that there was, along with the quality, the necessary quality of consciousness, of which will is an active polarity of that. Mere consciousness is not necessarily embody will, okay? But in order now to bring things into existence, there must be will, and there must be an exercise of will. And if in the exercise of will you bring about the existence of space and matter and time, and now what we are adding to that is what was brought into existence was not only time, space, and matter, within which now the things of creation would dance. Since we know the things of creation also exhibit consciousness, man is a conscious being. And one of the qualities of man indeed is will. That means that the qualities of mind, which includes now the ineffable that I have been talking about, and which is a subject of numerology, in other words, the mental, spiritual, the psychological and so forth aspects of being, that had to have been part of that potentiality in the Eshof, in that formless state, when the earth and all the things that became now part of the earth were as yet formless and void. And spirit had to be part of that, so that what we have is a sort of a grand dichotomy at the top between mind and matter, and there's a sort of a bridging principle, which is part mind and part matter, which is the idea of spirit. I didn't deal with that aspect before in the talks I've given on the tree of life diagram of the Gawalat, the ideas of Gawalat that's now called Kabbalah. But what I'm given now is that indeed, in the grand dichotomy between mind and matter, mind exhibits consciousness at a sort of a passive polarity, and will at an active polarity, and matter exhibits, material substance, so to say, that we can touch and bite and taste sometimes, as one sort of a manifestation of that grander concept of matter, at the extreme, that sort of solidity of matter. But at the other extreme of that is the idea of energy, which is not tangible the way matter is tangible, but it is, as Einstein would suggest, there is sort of one can go between energy and matter, and indeed, they're sort of mutually sort of transmutable. Matter can be transmuted into energy, and in a sense intelligence can be transmuted into matter. But even energy, which is an intangibility to it, the effects can be very clear of energy, whether electrical, whether magnetic, and so forth. There's a certain plainness as to their effects, the effects of energy and its various forms. But there's also a less tangible aspect of it, which is called spirit, So spirit is also part of the matter half of the mind-matter dichotomy, as a sort of an even finer aspect of energy than the sort of physical energy that physics concerns itself with. But spirit also is part of the mind aspect of that mind-matter dichotomy. So between, if you like, the extreme on the mind half of will and the extreme on the matter half of the dichotomy, mind-matter dichotomy, the extreme of energy in terms of its intangibility, there's another bridging principle, which is that of spirit. And mind is well able to work with spirit. And spirit also is transmutable in some sense with energy. And in its most obvious manifestation, this is what is there at the base of all human emotion. There's a spiritual connection there. So, you meet a woman. There's a magic, in terms of how men and women interrelate. And you meet a woman and you fall in love, and there's an attraction there. That is a spiritual thing. But it has an energetics to it, because you are drawn sometimes, to the point where it overrides your good sense. You're drawn to the woman, and vice versa. It can be as well. And sometimes there's a repulsion there. And this is where now spirit is working. And spirit is subject to some of the laws that come out of the mind sphere in terms of the exercise now of will. So this is there from the beginning. So when that initial vibration, that godly vibration, sets things up, so that vibration becomes, if you like, a sort of a recurring principle of the Most High's creation, by which now the things of the world are created. Those things of the world cannot be separated from vibration and principles of vibration. And included in those are those that whole spectrum of things, the top part of which is this mind-matter dichotomy, with spirit kind of occupying an intersection between mind and matter. All right, so at the mind, at the sort of leftmost, it doesn't have to be leftmost, that's just how it is in my mind. At the leftmost part of that dichotomy, it's actually a continuum, is mere consciousness. And still in the sort of sphere of mind is, at the rightmost part, is will. And then in terms of the matter part of that grand dichotomy or duality, at the leftmost part of that is energy, which is sort of intangible in its form. And then at the right extreme of the matter continuum is the solidity of matter. Well, all right, but spirit is what there occupies the common ground of that rightmost part of the mind dichotomy, and the leftmost part of the energy part of the matter dichotomy. I hope that is making some sense. So, but I'm saying that to say that when we talk about vibration as being sort of a core qualitative principle and aspect of the Most High's creation, and therefore any viable cosmology or any viable cosmological model of that creation, mind and consciousness and matter and spirit and energy, they must all be part of it from the beginning, and in effect identified with the Eshof, which is that formless aspect of God's creation, even before anything was brought into existence. thing essentially being translatable as the idea of vibration. So this is what now is I'm suggesting is part of the cosmological significance of this numerological scheme that the Most High has given me. And in this, just to remind and to, bring into sort of, evidence before you, because I've dealt with it, at the base of the numerological scheme he's given me is the three principles, the cymatic principle, and we can see how that applies to sort of the time-space-mind aspect of his creation, as well as the time-space-matter aspect. He's given me the additivity principle, which is an obvious arithmetic of frequency, and that makes obvious sense. And then on top of that is a sort of a principle coming out of musicology, which is the idea of periodicity and superposition. So that when a rhythm is fast enough in frequency, it becomes, the air registers it not as a fast rhythm, but as a note entire. And they're easily 7 notes that are easily distinguished by our auditory apparatus, and there's a periodicity to the occurrence of those notes. And this is the idea of the octave. So we have 7 notes, and then they increase in pitch, and then when we've crossed the 7, we go to the 8th note. It becomes simply the first note that is repeated. So it's not all notes are not unique. That sort of ties with what Solomon let us to know. There's no new thing under the sun, so the notes repeat. Now, you could have a 7-tone scale, you can have a 10-tone scale, you can have a 12-tone scale, you can have other kinds of organizations of these tones, but the point is they will repeat. Okay, so this is what's going on. So vibration is key, but also key is the idea of the mind-matter-spirit duality from the beginning. So any kind of cosmological scheme where you don't have this qualitative understanding as having to be at the basis of your cosmology, you're going to find yourself, up the creek without a paddle, to use that very sort of American expression. Because after you do what you do, now you can't explain where consciousness comes from. That will remain forever a conundrum, because you cannot bring consciousness out of a energy matter sort of specification of your cosmological model. And even Einstein, E equals mc squared, that's a nice little sort of a finding that suggests the transmutability, one between the other of energy and matter. But guess what? That leaves out spirit, doesn't it? And if you leave out spirit, you can't get to the mind aspects of the Most High's creation. You can't get to the emotional sphere. You can't get to any of the mental, emotional, or spiritual aspects of being. And so your cosmology will remain wanting. So this is now what the Most High is having me now to bring to the people, so to say, and also in the process to key off this conundrum that now the physical cosmologists face, which is the failure of the Copernican principle, because heliocentrism is being falsified. That is the point. And if it is falsified, then of course, you have to look for something else. But it's not only heliocentrism that is falsified. It's the whole view of the universe that, even would have allowed that mistake to be made. And that mistake can only be made if you completely disregard what is there in Genesis, which says the earth is specific, is different from every other thing, or every other sort of planet, because the earth was created, a firmament erected over the earth, separating the waters above from the waters beneath, which is falsifying, or at least inconsistent with an idea of outer space, which is like a vacuum. No, it's water that it occupies all that space, so to say, around this world called the earth. And guess what? The luminaries that we know as sun, moon, and stars are circling above the flat plane of the earth, in the firmament, within the firmament. So again, the idea of this, outer space is not what the Most High said He did. And guess what? If you can't really measure the distance from the earth to the sun unless you have some, because it's like having only one eye and having no sort of cues or clues as to relative size, and now you see something in the distance and you can't say how far that thing is until you can, maybe if you know, well, okay, that's a man that I'm seeing, and you know the sort of rough height range of a man, and you know about this idea of, what is it called, where things that are far away look smaller. There's a term for that which I now forget. Anyway, yeah, but you could bring that kind of idea, which is a sort of a geometric idea, now to estimate a distance, because use some geometric principles and so forth to kind of estimate a distance. This is what soldiers can do. They can, I was an army cadet for a while. Actually, I was somewhat of a marksman, not the greatest, but fairly good. So one of the things you have to be able to do is to range, to kind of estimate distance. Well, when you have enough cues, yes, you can do that. But if you have no cues, you're looking up at the sky and you're seeing the sun, and now to say, well, it is 93 million miles away, and therefore the size of this sun is some huge kind of object relative to the earth, well, no, you're going off, you really don't have the cues to know that to be the case unless you make some starting assumptions. But if the starting assumptions essentially contradict the word or the Most High, and you have no basis for debunking the word of the Most High, no, you're just going off into speculation. Okay, but let me carry on here. So, furthermore, with the initial godly word of vibration, time and space and matter sprang into existence, and, well, I say it here, formless matter assumed form. As with an ephemeral piece of musical architecture, the things of the world are ephemeral, coming into and going out of existence both in time and space. The only question is the duration of such existence, which at bottom is a question of frequency and vibration. In this sense, apparent material solidity is as ephemeral as musical architecture, with material substance forming and reforming all in accordance with a cosmic arrangement orchestrated by the Most High. He has given us the sublimities of music to serve as a sort of scale model for the larger symphony. In this context, it bears noting that a musical composition, let alone orchestration and arrangement, with the many voices and the many instruments and so forth, is a construct of the mind, although given expression in form accessible by our auditory sensory apparatus. If it serves as a model for the cosmic symphony of all the things in existence, it renders atheistic postulations untenable. And atheistic postulations are the starting assumption of the physical cosmologists. But let me carry on. For as mind and intelligence are required to create music, so too must mind and intelligence be required to bring the things of the world into existence. The simple reason is that if the world and all that therein is may be likened unto a cosmic symphony, then mind and intelligence must even more so have been required to bring them into existence than a musical composition or arrangement. The greater symphony must obviously require no less intelligence than the lesser. Mind and intelligence must be separate from, superior to, and prior to any musical creation. Neither may any musical creation spring spontaneously into existence without the prior exercise of mind, intelligence, and indeed even will. Moreover, of a necessarily personalistic, even possibly whimsical character, since personality and will shape the composition. If so music, then so too creation. Given a cosmic symphony, its composer, their creator, must exist. Further, the creator must exist in part as pure mind, since it is out of mind that ultimate cause must come, as a symphony must come out of the mind ultimately of the composer. But in other part, the creator must have access to a medium through which creation may merely be. So this is the idea now of you have the mind on one side, you have matter on the other side. So it's time, space, matter in terms of the things of the world. But even the things of the world will have the qualities of mind and of consciousness and indeed of spirit. And spirit will be in part mind and in part energy. That medium may be called by any number of names, the best of which is perhaps matter, but with the clear appreciation that such term must include energy and spirit. Matter so conceptualized may be both subtle and gross. The main point is that it is medium through which mind may express itself. The concept of vibration presupposes the existence of such medium, whether fine as ether or gross as gas, liquid, or solid. In the grosser aspects of the medium, it is that which we call energy and matter. In its finer aspects, it is linked to that which is called spirit, the sine qua non of life per se, and in particular to those aspects of it which link the material with the mind aspects, the mental, the emotional, psychological, and spiritual aspects. So this is the idea of the cosmic symphony being a model for the Most High's creation, and therefore a sort of a model for a cosmology that is viable. Carrying on, all the sciences provide only glimpses of the mind that is ultimate composer and cause. The physical sciences are allowed such glimpses through a methodology based, but only in part, upon experiment. The spiritual sciences must depend upon revelation, as may be inferred from Holy Scripture. For example, in the book of Enoch, chapter 8, verses 3 to 4, where we were told about the fallen angels, actually. And here let me read this quote. Semyaza taught enchantments and root cuttings. Amaras, the resolving of enchantments. Barakiel taught astrology. Kokabel, the constellations. Ezekiel, the knowledge of the clouds. Arakiel, the signs of the earth. Shamsiel, the signs of the sun. And Sariel, the course of the moon. So all these are parts and aspects of the Most High's creation of cosmology. So all sciences, whether spiritual or physical, are subject in principle to objective check and possible falsification. The subjectivity of the evidence when dealing with the ineffable realms, mental, emotional, psychological, spiritual, makes strict falsification difficult. Nevertheless, the test of usefulness is sure over time. If a science, whether spiritually or experimentally revealed, does not work, quote unquote, then it will pass out of use, isn't it? But note, a true science may well pass out of use for reasons that have nothing to do with whether or not it works, as with many ars perdita, lost arts, including, for example, the art of building a pyramid, such as the Great Pyramid at Giza. Carrying on. If vibrational energies lie at the heart of all perception, it should not be surprising that such energies may be classified the same way in which musical notes are classified. There's a scale, and within the scale there are distinct notes which repeat from octave to octave, which is a periodicity principle, but with increasing pitch as one goes up the scale. Okay, so I will leave that reading there. As to the Cosmic Symphony, I think I've made the point that musical composition and acoustic and musical ideas provide a sort of a model for the coming into being of the multiplicity of all the things of creation that we find indeed in the Most High's creation. So this is the idea of the Cosmic Symphony as being a sort of a model of cosmology for the Most High's creation. And that brings us back now to chapter 18, section 10, after having used numerological ideas to sort of give interpretation to some of what's in the book of Revelation, and then ending with this subsection 10, which dealt with cosmological implications and the Copernican principle and so forth. So I'm going to stop here, but with a sort of undertaking to continue. And when I do continue, I will come back to this section here on the cosmological implications of numerology, and also try to tie it in with sort of, because at the basis of numerology is number, isn't it? And at the basis of mathematics also is number. So there's a kind of a connection also between numerology and mathematics. So I may say a few things about that, which is not here in this text. Here I dealt with the sort of physical cosmologies and the Copernican principle. and etc. So, but when I come back to the continuation, I will deal with this whole, conundrum of the physical cosmologists and what they're now confronted with, and as a modeling idea to suggest that the answer is the reality of the word given to us in Scripture. The sort of qualitative cosmology that needs to be advanced has to be capable of addressing some of the things I've mentioned. In particular, the time-space matter versus the time-space mind aspect, and tying those back also to the tree of life and the way in which the creation of the things of the world unfolded, and with the things of the world having some aspects of the qualities of the Creator, because certainly man, it says very clearly, we are created in the image of God. So some of those qualities of a God are to be found in man. And that is why you have the mind-matter duality of God, of the Eshov, having now taken up residence, so to say, as part of the qualitative features, so to say, of man. Cannot separate mind from man, or man from his mind, and etc. So I'll deal with that in another talk. And for right now, I'm going to say all praises, all glory, all exaltation be unto the Most High. And to those still listening, I say Shalom.